Let me thank my colleague from Maryland, Senator Mikulski. I was listening to the exchange between Senator Murray and Senator Mikulski, and I just really want to concur in their comments. We need to act on H.R. 933, the amendments offered by Senator Mikulski and Senator Shelby. It's important for us to move forward on this for several reasons. First, we are over 5 months into the fiscal year, and we need to enact the FY12 budget. If we're going to get to the FY13 budget, excuse me. If we're going to get to the FY14 budget, we've got to get past the FY13 budget. So it's critically important that we pass the continuing resolution omnibus bill, send it back to the House, hopefully reconcile those differences very quickly, because we only have a few more days to get this enacted in order to make sure government continues, but just as importantly, to give predictability to our agencies for the next 7 months. We are very close to getting that done, and I would urge my colleagues to cooperate. As the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Mikulski, has said. I certainly strongly support the work that's been done. I thank Senator Mikulski and Senator Shelby for bringing us together in a way that I would hope the Senate would operate, that we work together, Democrats and Republicans, come together on a bill and move that legislation. Now, having said that, I must tell you I share the frustration that Senator Mikulski talked about. There are provisions that are not included in this legislation that I would like to see included, and there are some provisions that are included that I would like to see not included. Let me talk about one of the provisions that's included that I regret that is there, and that is the provision that would extend the pay freeze for our federal workforce through the remainder of the current budget year through FY13. I am proud to represent the people of Maryland in the United States Senate along with my colleague, Senator Mikulski. We represent 130,000 federal workers. That's about 5.6% of the Maryland workforce are federal workers. These are public servants. These are people that are on the front line. These are people who are providing critical service every day to the people of this country. A couple weeks ago, I was at the National Institutes of Health. I had a chance to talk to the workforce there. The work they are doing is so critically important to the people of this country. I can tell you that the basic research that they do is critically important to a lot of companies in the creation of jobs, and that's absolutely true. But let me just tell you the story of one individual that I happened to meet. One of the scientists there took me to the program that they are doing. The work that they are doing is in the field of research on renal cancer. And the reason I say that is I had a chance to meet with one of the individuals that is in that program. He comes from a different state. He was diagnosed a while ago with having a form of renal cancer where there was no cure. He was told by his doctor, you have basically two choices. We can treat you with the only technology that we know, either here or at any facility in the country, and you have 6 months to live. Or you can participate in an NIH program, and they're looking at alternative ways to treat this form of renal cancer. Well, this person picked the latter course and came to Bethesda, Maryland, and participated in the program, and they discovered in this form of cancer that there is drug therapy that will stop the growth of the cancer cells. And he is now living a somewhat more normal life with a hope of survival. He didn't have that just a few months ago. Now, when I talked to this person about what he felt about sequestration, you know what he told me? Or about government shutdowns? He said, I never thought I would need government. You know, I was working. I never thought I would need government. But I tell you, NIH needs the money we give them. It helps save my life, and it helps develop the type of scientific base that we need in this country. Now, that story could be told many times over. They need the predictability of a budget. They need the legislation that Senator Mikulski is promoting that will give them the funding for the remainder of this year so they can continue their critically important work. I visited the Social Security Administration just a week or so ago, and I met a lot of hardworking federal workers who are trying to get Social Security benefits to those who need it. We have people who have disabilities trying to get the disability determination so they can get their check. There's a delay in getting that done. Well, that delay will only get longer if Social Security Administration doesn't have the people they need in order to process those claims. I could mention many other agencies, NSA and the critical work they do on cybersecurity. These are the best mathematicians in the world, and they're federal workers, and they're serving in the most noble of public service. Or the work being done at NIST, which is developing the technology needs for our future, or the work done at FDA and food safety. These are all people working in my state of Maryland for a federal agency as federal workers getting the job done for the people of this country. And they deserve our support. They've already sacrificed. They've seen budgets that have shrunk. There have less people working and their mission has increased. More work, less workers. They've now been through 2 years, and now it'll be 3, of a pay freeze. That translates to $90 billion contribution to the deficit problems of this country. That's what the federal workers have done. And quite frankly, I find it disappointing that a very modest pay adjustment for a 7-month period, a 0.5%, 0.5% increase that was in the president's budget, that we held off for the first 5 months, that we're now going to hold it off for the remainder of this year. I think that's wrong. That pay adjustment should have gone forward, and I regret that it's not included in the legislation that we'll have a chance to act on. Now, there are provisions in this bill. By the way, let me tell you about the federal workforce. They're going to have additional sacrifices because this continuing resolution omnibus bill incorporates the lower numbers caused by these across-the-board cuts by sequestration. As a result of that, many of our federal workers are going to be getting furlough notices. Now, what's a furlough notice mean? That means as much as 1 day out of 5, they're going to be asked not to show up for work. That translates to a 20% pay cut. Some may be 1 out of every 10 days. That's a 10% pay cut. Now, if you have a mortgage payment to make or you have your utility bills to pay, they're not going to accept the fact that it can be 10% less because you've been furloughed 1 day every 10 days. So our federal workers are going to even do more. And I think we need to acknowledge that, not by just saying they're doing a great job of public service, by giving them the support that they need. And I hope as we move forward on the budget considerations for FY14, we will take into consideration the sacrifices already made by our federal workforce and give them the support that they need to get the job done for the people of this country. Now, there are provisions that were left out of this continuing resolution omnibus bill that I think should have been included. Let me support Senator Harkin in the amendment that he has pending that would basically put into the continuing resolution the work that was done during regular order by the Appropriations Committee on the Labor HHS appropriation bill. It really accepts regular order. But what it does, it doesn't increase the total at all. It just adjusts the money that was spent in fiscal year 12 to the committee priorities established in FY13. In other words, it uses regular order with the same appropriation dollars in order to update the spending in the agencies under the committee's jurisdiction. This makes sense. Let me just give you one example. I could give you many others. I talked about the National Institutes of Health. I talked about how valuable the work that they do is all about. Well, as a result of budget reductions, they can now only approve 1 out of about every 7 eligible grants. That they make grants to our universities, to groups that do work to find the answers to these diseases. They only can now give 1 out of every 7. As was explained to me by Dr. Collins, they have to choose between the really great grant that are submitted and the great grants that are submitted, and can only take a very few number of the really worthwhile projects that are out there. So we need to do better. Senator Harkin's amendment would increase the amount of money going to NIH by about $140 million. Once again, it doesn't change the overall totals. It just adjusts the priorities from FY13 to FY14. So I would urge my colleagues to support that amendment so that an agency like NIH can get the help they needed without at all affecting the overall spending of this nation. I really do look forward to us working together, Democrats and Republicans, in the national interest. Compromise, bipartisan, that's what we need to do. That's exactly what Senator Mikulski and Shelby have done in bringing forward this legislation. It deserves our support. I was listening to Senator Murray. I know that we'll be voting on a budget next week for FY14. What we need to do is work together, Democrats and Republicans, let these bills go into conference, and let's work together and bring out a budget that represents the best for our nation to move forward. The thing I hear the most from the people of Maryland is that they want us to make decisions. They need the predictability of a budget. We can give them that for our current year by the enactment of the bill that's currently before us, and then we could give them the predictability they need for the future decisions of our nation by approving in a bipartisan manner the budget for FY14. I hope we can do that also. That would clearly be in the best interest of our nation.